Town of Essex Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, December 12th, 2024. And just call out, this is a significant evening, and this is the last development application that the Planning Commission for the Town of Essex will hear. Starting in January of next year, development apps will shift to the DRB. So this is a milestone or a millstone? Okay, so first we have agenda changes, and we do have one, is that a preliminary plan public hearing application has been withdrawn. That was originally item 6. Are there any other agenda changes from staff? Or seeing none, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Josh, seconded by Georgia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. So at this point, the next item, it would be public to be heard. If anybody in the public would like to present commentary to the Planning Commission for items that are not on the agenda, this is the time to raise your hand, be recognized, and we'll hear what you have to say. Seeing nothing in the room, we'll continue on at this point. And the next item is, item 5 is a sketch plan public hearing. This is a continued review from September 12th of this year. This is Sterling Homes. This is a sketch application for a 28 lot subdivision on, where are we, 53 Center Road. Kent.
Okay, so this is coming back to us. It was continued. The applicants provided 2 different designs for your consideration. One of them has 34 units and the other has 32 dwelling units overall. In a table on the second sheet of the staff report, it compares the differences dimensionally between the 2 proposals. The main difference is the preferred design has 2 more building lots, but then a number of the building lots are insufficient in size. So that's the main difference, but they show with removing a couple of the lots that they can meet the dimensional requirements for the acreage requirements. However, as you can see in the table, there's a number of other parts with the setbacks that neither of the plans comply with. And then I think I would just briefly run you to the very back of the staff report in the conclusion section. I've tried to just summarize there the main points for consideration at this point with their application. So these were the main, I won't read through them, but those 9 elements were the main things that came up for them to be aware of moving forward. And do you have any particular questions, or I might just leave it at that for now?
One of the areas that we had called out ahead of time was the access and the traffic impact and so forth. So what do we have here from Public Works? Or do you want to let the applicant address that?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good one for the applicant.
Okay.
Because they've done some work on that.
Okay, great. Any questions for staff? Hearing none. Come on up, have a seat, speak to the mic, and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm Colin Frisbee from Sterling Homes. Nick Booten from Cross Engineering. Thank you for having us. We're honored to be the last one. We hope to be a milestone, not a millstone. We are here today for sketch. We understand that this is the last hearing of this type, and we do want to very much leave here with sketch plan approval. There's lots of good things that we talked about last time. You sent us out of here with 3 main things to look into and get a lot further along on, and we're glad to be coming back, having made good deal of progress on all three of those. There's still the need for housing that we talked about 3 months ago when we were here. All of that, sometimes when I get buried in these details, I start to get wound around the axle on some of these details, but just remembering that where we are in the need for housing, and that this location within town is a place that is ripe for housing. It will be walkable to Essex Experience thereafter, and all of those positive attributes of the location writ large. The three things you left us with last time, some technical details to be sure, but were slopes, affordability, and emergency access. I'm going to just kind of go through at a kind of a high level on those three. We've worked with staff, Public Works, Fire, and tried to make sure that we kind of worked through these things a couple of different times. The slopes, we've adjusted the plans, both sets of plans that you have in front of you fully comply with the less than 20% slope. So we've made the adjustments required on the slopes piece. There'll be more that we can talk about, but at the high level, that's where we are. The affordability piece is one that is placed to density. The largest single factor we have to impact affordability at this level is the more units we can have, the larger that denominator is, and the lower the cost. As you saw in some of our prep, if we went currently the two plans you're looking at, 34 to 32, at a minimum that cost difference is at least $5,790 difference if we remove those two lots per house. That's a straight average across all 32 in that case. And the third one was the emergency access. We talked with Fire Department, Public Works, Planning and Zoning on that one. We've come up with a plan that all of those entities, we've agreed that we have a plan for emergency access by widening Saybrook Road from Center Road to the entrance to our neighborhood. By widening that to 3 lanes within the town's current right-of-way. That is something that is possible and feasible and acceptable to both the fire department and Public Works, most specifically, and how that would go. We have continued discussions and reaching out to our good friends at Saybrook, and there are other places and potential connections that could happen through Saybrook, but those are beyond our control. And just want to reiterate that Public Works, the fire department, all felt that we had the ability to solve the emergency access through that widening of the access up to where you turn onto into our neighborhood. Clearly the traffic design and that intersection design with that widening and all of that happened during preliminary when we work with V-Trans. So we can't, until we get sketch, we can't fully design that and work through with V-Trans of exactly what that's going to look like. And we can't guarantee you sitting here tonight what it's going to look like. We have some ideas, and we'll work with, at the appropriate time, V-Trans, Public Works, to make sure that we get set up for success there. We made several adjustments to the plans. We adjusted the trails, the trail access, added another piece of trail access. We're here today. We've continued a couple of things that we've kept in here where we are asking for you to make adjustments. Side yard setbacks, for instance, or setbacks to include side yard and front yard setbacks. We're going to give you our best pitch. We're still requesting a 26-foot wide road. Public Works would prefer a 30, and we'll talk about impervious surface and the nature and the feel of the neighborhood. If you say it has to be 30, then it has to be 30. We get that part, and that's all part of the feedback that we're looking to come away from in sketch so that we can work forward during preliminary. And so things like that width of the road or the setbacks, we're looking to have a discussion, explain our point of view today, answer any questions you have, and then work from and with the guidance that we get coming out of here. I think that pretty well covers the high level overview. Happy to go through line by line on the 9 items from Kent's conclusions part, but before that, if there were any pieces throughout the body of the staff report as well that people had questions on, happy to talk through.
Okay.
And or if there was anything from either of the plans that you wanted us to point out. I think the main takeaway from our perspective, the plan that is a bit more dense does have a number of lots that are just under the 0.2 acres. Overall, we're still well above the average of the 0.2 acres. If you look at them visually, they look generally very similar. I don't think they changed the scope we don't think they changed the scope, the feel, the overall sense of the neighborhood. And if we can do that in a more affordable way, then we'd love to do that. Although understanding that there had been some strong reservations about going below the 0.2, we've also provided that option as well.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
I have just one thing to point out. Had a conversation with the Public Works Director, and he is okay with the 26-foot wide road, so that we would, staff is supportive of that.
Okay.
And his reasoning was he recently approved one for the Weston Woods, I believe, is that what it's called, the new development off of Pinecrest Drive.
Okay.
So there's precedent, and it's fine for plows and maintenance and all that.
Great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I would just also add that, yes, the fire department and Public Works were supportive of the road being widened up by 15. It provides better access there and make sure that there's more likely that emergency vehicles would be able to get through and access the neighborhood if there was something that happened at that intersection. But my understanding is there'd still need to be a secondary emergency access area, and the applicant's still working with Saybrook to try to figure out how that might be able to happen. It sounded like put a lot of effort into trying to connect with the neighborhood, although that's been really challenging, the way that their multiple different condo associations that have to then work together, and it's been difficult to do that. So, but it seems like a lot of effort was put toward there. One thing that I heard from talking with Bart today is he felt like it would help if there was an approval at the sketch level, that it might add an extra encouragement for getting Saybrook's attention on it, because it feels more like a real project and there's some endorsement of what's happening with it. So I just wanted to pass that along because that was a conversation
So that's a developer strategy.
that I had with him today.
We don't have to approve a developer strategy.
No, but I wanted to just communicate that since he had shared that with me and he couldn't make it tonight.
So I'm going to jump back, and I do have a question. In the conditions that you listed, number 3 was the emergency exit. Number 4 was the addressing the traffic impact between Saybrook and 15. And it looks like number 4 you've got planned forward by having that extra lane.
And the emergency access with that extra lane.
No, because the line 3 or condition 3 is the emergency access, and that is the secondary access to the development. That's the piece that's in question, which you just touched on. So emergency enhanced access for emergency vehicles by widening the lane, reducing the potential conflict with emergency access going from emergency vehicles coming and going. But that doesn't address the secondary access into the development, in or out of the development. And it looks like on line 182, Public Works is saying they're in support of emergency access connection to the existing town pedestrian path on Essex Way. So that's still in question, and that's the secondary exit that has not been addressed yet. But it's in this to be addressed.
Can I?
Absolutely.
So, everything you just said there was accurate. Our discussions with the fire department and their characterization was that they felt that they, in their words, had emergency access with the wider road coming in. And I understand where you're going with the next piece. They all, and there are numerous examples throughout town where that strategy has been used without the secondary access. We're going to do everything we can to work cooperatively with everyone available to get a secondary access. We do not own any land that gets us to a secondary access. Any secondary access would have to come through Saybrook. to get
Understood.
there.
And that gets us to the same point that we had before. I mean, a development of this size needs a secondary access, and that's there. I know it's much of it is pre-existing, but it still needs that secondary access. We run into this before. There's two other major developments I know right off the top of my head that don't have a secondary access, and one of them was wavered because of the extraordinarily wide streets that are in there. The potential for having the complete street blockaded is very small, and that's Tanglewood. And the other one is Lang Farm, which does have emergency access in a way over into Woodlawn. That was on the docket for many, many years, and that wasn't put in. I don't remember the exact history of why it wasn't put in, but that kept coming back as an issue. And I believe the resultant was that it's accessible for emergency vehicles, but it's not traffic flow through. So that's the piece that we still need to figure out how to get to.
And in our discussions with the fire
But
department,
it's not the fire department that's the ones that are driving it. We just remember that.
correct. Them being understanding that, them
Yep.
being the primary providers of emergency access, it takes a vote of a whole bunch of you folks to approve that eventually, were it to happen. But the discussions around that piece focused on the trail that runs immediately adjacent Saybrook now, and the ability to gain access through there in a true emergency, even as we sit here today and with relatively little additional stuff. The Public Works had talked about water was one of the concerns that had been brought up at our previous hearing, and talking about, and Saybrook had brought up, some neighbors in Saybrook had brought up concerns about water, and Public Works would love to loop water through from the dead end in Saybrook out to Essex Way. And if that becomes a reality and a possibility, one that we would endorse and would support, then potentially that could be a source of not only looping the water, but the easement above that for the protection of said water would be a place where we could get emergency access in as well. If you want, I can point it out on a map, on a multi-use path connection.
And quite frankly, it would be a benefit to the Saybrook units as well, to have an emergency access in. So that's
From our
that's a big-
perspective, absolutely, we can't tell them that.
So, commissioners, any thoughts, questions?
I was in agreement with you, the difference between widening Saybrook and having a bona fide secondary access, which I think is a vital thing. That's pretty much my big point right now as well.
Now, I guess I'm encouraged that there's positive discussions, and it's not a, it doesn't look like there's absolutely no option. So to me, that would not be something that would hold up sketch as long as it's identified as a condition that needs to be addressed. That's sort of where I was getting to. I don't see it being something that's approvable without a specific some way to address it, mitigate it. I don't know that just the widening of the access on 15 is mitigating the dual access into the development. That said, commissioners, I'm still going back to you guys. I'm talking too much. Okay, the public hearing is open. still open. So I'd like to entertain questions from the audience, either online or in the crowd. In the crowd, we have a huge crowd.
Can I ask really quick, Christy and John, I just need the last name, unless somebody already has it. For the minutes. I meant to do that earlier.
Okay.
There's also a Janet
Mm-hmm.
and a phone number.
Sorry.
So folks that are online, we're looking for the contact information so we can add you to the minutes.
Stark and Tucci.
Stark and,
Just that's Christy and John. It just came up in the comments.
oh, awesome.
So before we take any additional comments, I'm going to ask anybody who is going to provide commentary to please stand. I'll swear you in. I should have done that earlier. I'd like you to stand as well, please. And just stand, raise your right hand, and just anything, like any comment that you provide, even if you're going to bring it up. Any testimony you present this evening will be truthful to the best of your abilities, and has been truthful to the best of your abilities.
Yes.
Thank you.
So moved.
Sir, you had a question or wanted to provide commentary.
More of a, not a question, more of a comment.
Why don't you come up to closer to this mic so we can pick it up on for
Sure.
that guy? That'll help.
My name is Mike Venuti, and I am president of one of the phases, Phase 4 over at Saybrook. And I am also serve on what we call the President's Council, which is basically a group of all the presidents of the phases that is responsible for the common land, the pool, the trash pickup, the landscaping, etc. We think widening of Saybrook Road at the opening there makes very good sense. Our only concern at this point is this emergency exit. If at the dead end of Saybrook, there is an emergency exit only for emergency vehicles and not for true traffic of the public going on to Essex Way,
Yep.
then we would have no objection with the site plan at all.
Good to hear.
All right. And also, I would like to take exception to what I've heard you say about Saybrook not being cooperative in this
I didn't
effort.
mean to phrase it like that. It just sounded like the applicant wasn't able to get together with you, not that.
Well, we were on the phone with Brad just 2 weeks ago. We had email contacts and all.
Okay.
And we feel very informed at this point in time. So, again, we would like a street light out there on Route 15, but that's up to the state. And I think, I'm hopeful that once they see this plans and what's happening, it will happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone online who would like to offer commentary? There's a signal, raise your hand option or something. Or just speak out if you got something to say. Christy and John, go for it.
Hi, thank you. I do still feel that,
Could you just for a moment, just for the recording, can you just state your name, please?
yep, John Tucci of 97 Saybrook. I don't think that the widening of the road at the end of Saybrook is going to fully address the issues that we have during times of high traffic. Pulling out onto that road if we can't get some sort of traffic light out there. It's also, and I meant to say this last time, it already gets, we already have folks that pull up on the right-hand side as if there was a right turning lane there. So there already is, people kind of just pulling up, side by side next to each other there when they can. It's also very difficult to see when people are at the Sweet Scoops ice cream shop, especially, obviously during the summer and whatnot. Traffic heading towards, Jericho and out towards the Essex High School and whatnot. So visibility is pretty tough. It can get pretty dangerous sometimes with people turning in and out of the ice cream shop. And especially without the light. And if we have even more traffic kind of pushing towards that direction during high traffic times, I'm worried that it might end up, even more unsafe than it is. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Don?
So my question is, for the site approval, if they don't have a second exit, it can still be approved? How does that work?
If it,
You can approve what they're applying for now, even though they haven't done a second exit?
as a sketch plan, yes. And then moving forward, it would be a discussion as to whether or not a waiver would be granted to that condition.
Yeah, and the way the zoning regulation
Thank you.
reads is that it actually needs to be approved by town department heads, planning commission, and the select board.
Yeah.
To use that emergency exit
As a,
as second access.
Yep.
And we're familiar with that requirement.
all set? Kent?
So this is partially a comment and partially a question. I think that since the Route 15 intersection's owned by the state, they would determine what the appropriate design for that intersection would be, whether it's adding an extra lane or having it signalized. I believe that they would be looking at the data that you're providing, and then an answer would be produced.
As part of a
So
preliminary
they
review.
They may decide that an extra lane is suitable, or that it's not needed,
Or that it needs to be signalized.
or that it needs to be signalized, and that would be up to them to make that decision.
And that AOT process, that would be, you would be doing that as part of preliminary, would that be correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're going to take this sketch, hopefully with your approval of sketch plan, go to VTrans, start the conversation, see their comments, and go down that road.
Okay. Is there anyone else with questions? Okay, so let's go around the table for a moment. Trevor, thoughts?
Well, yes, you're probably gonna need a traffic signal. I'm sure it warrants, meets the several traffic signal warrants. Well, I just, the lots seem a little small, but I understand that it affects affordability and that there's a need for housing. So I really don't have much to add.
Stephanie?
I think my only thing is on the setbacks and the waivers that you're asking, to get a little more clarification on why they were set the way that they were. Is it for aesthetics? That the town of Essex wanted those, frontages to look that way? Or is there something more there as to why we would want those setbacks on each side? If somebody's going to build a development and people are going to buy knowing that they are that way, I mean, that is their choice. So I'm open to that conversation because I think this provides much needed housing that I keep hearing all over the place is needed. And I don't think that anybody, and I've read a lot on Essex affordability, and I can't find a way to determine what any single family home would be determined as affordable, because we don't know everybody's individual income criteria. So for me, it's just around those little nitty bitty
Yep.
details. But
So we do have to remember that this is sketch, right? So we're not getting into the fine granular details. There's a lot here.
Yep.
But this is, on one level, this is conceptual. Do we feel that there's an opportunity to take, what's in front of it, even if there are still issues? We have to see whether or not there are opportunities for those to be presented at the next round of review and addressed and mitigated. And that might even include waivers or whatever. But again, we're not going to necessarily get absolute granularity yet.
So in that context, I'm comfortable with it because I think it's in the area that is for growth, that we want growth, that is smart growth.
Yep.
So
And before we go any further, there's two designs that are put in front of us. So let's to go back. I'm going to restart our discussion or question. And are we preferring the 34 unit design or the 32 unit design? So Trevor, I'm coming back to you. Let's give everybody else a chance to think ahead.
32?
Okay.
32.
Georgia, what are your thoughts on the whole app?
I like this project a lot, and I prefer the 34. And I
Okay.
think the planning commission needs to look at maybe down the road, reevaluating why we have the rules we have.
But
I like to know.
Paula, I know this is new to you, but
Well, one of my questions is, if there is a connection to Essex Way, where would it be?
that would probably be something that would be determined during preliminary. That would barely be something that would be worked out. The finality of that would be during preliminary.
Okay.
Remember, we're establishing that something needs to be there, and it's up to the developer to come up with that solution. We're not engineering that for him.
Okay. I didn't, there isn't any place that's obvious to me, so.
Again, that would be, I think it's, if we're making that a condition, then,
Okay, so-
then they have to come up with either an alternative or a better argument against it. So while you're thinking, again, we're looking at
So
this.
which-
Go ahead.
Is there an example of both?
It should
A
be,
layout?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, so the two that you're looking at, if you look at bottom right, there's the C1 and C2 plan. That's the 34 units. The EX-1 is the exhibit. That's the 32 units. On the plans, we don't have that second connection shown because there isn't a spot available to us to show that connection through Saybrook.
Oh, yeah,
So
no,
I'm-
that wasn't what I was asking. What I was asking,
basically, looking,
the 32 and
yeah.
the other,
So Catherine or Kent, can we bring up? Yeah. It's gonna make you turn around. But again, we also have in the staff report, we have the differences between the two plans. So they're outlined that, and we're gonna circle back on that with you, Kent.
I'm working on it.
Okay. So let's hold on that. Josh, I don't want to leave you out of this. I don't want to leave you out of this there.
Thank you. I think a good point that Georgia raised is that this looks like a job for the future planning commission to determine why the setbacks are what they are and what our purpose was. Because given compliance with the setbacks and minimum lot areas, I'd prefer the 32 because it'd be less waiver work for the future DRB. But in terms of getting more units in and more affordable housing, then you'd want the 34. So like as this stands, as of right now with the regs we have, I prefer the 32. And I was glad to hear that there is some potential forward movement on the secondary access, at least open to the possibility. That was very encouraging because that was one of my big concerns. So that's really good.
Secondary access can be a locked gate.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we're running. So I want to circle back with you, Kent, and looking at the dimensional chart that you've got listed. The everything, nothing really fits the designs. I mean, if we're looking at the R2 requirements, in the alternate design, we're our acreage. While we're acreage, we're good. We have one lot that doesn't meet the minimum frontage. We have 15 foot. None of the 32 units meet the minimum front setback. 7 feet. None of the units combined for the minimum side. 15 feet, none of the units comply with the minimum side setback for multi-unit single. I mean, it's like
So all of them could. There's no reason they can't. We're
So-
requesting these numbers.
right. So I'm going to turn to Kent because he wrote the report. I want to find out, what is this telling us?
My sense that I got from talking with Bart today, because I asked him the same thing, why your buildings look like they can fit in the property with just following the setbacks? Like, why don't you just do that? It sounded like from him, he just wanted more potential buildable room. These are small lots that would just give some more space for positioning the buildings within that site. And right now, the way that the buildings are shown, they're not pulled up as close to the front of the road as they really could be. the setbacks are shown with the dashed lines. The setbacks provide a much larger space than what's needed for the buildings. So the buildings can move around in that space, and I think since the lots, this is the way I was understanding it, since the lots are relatively small, if you make the setbacks less, it just gives you more room to move the building around. So I think when we see the next plans, we will actually see the buildings moved closer to the street, which would also help get them away from the steep slopes. But
I'm
yes,
sorry,
to
get
me-
them away from,
away from the steep slopes and the ravine
Oh,
that goes around there and the wetlands. Because even though it doesn't look like the building footprint itself is impacting the steep slopes and the wetland buffers, by clearing the rear yards and whatever people might be doing with their rear yards, that will have an impact on the wetlands and the steep slopes. So getting the buildings as far away from that would help. So that's something that can just be displayed differently. But to me, it looks like they could certainly meet the dimensional requirements
So does
that
the,
we have.
so this, but this is, use my words. Does this fit in the key issue and the conclusion you put that they need to explain why a PUD design is being proposed? Is that still part of that?
I think so, because
description?
it looks. to
I'm
me-
looking at number one on the,
It, so the, and I have two columns for the dimensional requirements, the regular requirements for standard subdivision and then the PUD requirements. And the PUDs are designed in a way to give some extra flexibility, but on lot sizes and how you would arrange the buildings, but it's not intended to just allow you to basically do a standard subdivision, but with reduced dimensional requirements.
okay.
Which is what this looks like. It looks like a standard subdivision with the reduced dimensional requirements. So, as part of the PUD requirements, we'd want to see some kind of rationale or explanation about how that fits in the goals and objectives of those. Like, for example, they are retaining some common open space.
Okay.
So that would be one thing that could be talked about, and about the trails.
So let's shift to Bart. Colin. Let's shift to Colin. And let's just see what the.
Catherine, can you just zoom out a little bit, please, on that, just so that we see the entirety of the site plan?
Maybe then just
Oh.
the next sheet.
Next sheet
Yeah.
is the overall plan, I think. The page 2, I think.
C2. So it should be
Yeah.
page 2 on this PDF.
There's a down arrow.
Yeah, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, thank you. And when you look at this, we feel like that we've met the requirements to qualify for a PUD. We've clustered the housing on about 40% of the available land of the entire parcel. So 60% open, we're clustered on the land. And so we feel like we've met that piece. There was good talk about wetlands and all of those things. We've avoided wetlands impacts very well. We've adjusted for the slopes. We've done those types of things. And then also in this iteration, you can see that we've added an additional trail connection. And then during the discussions with a bunch of different people, and the fire department specifically called out that this access trail right here is one that they have used in the not too distant past for getting people out from down low, and they requested that we maintain that trail as a access point for them, and we were able to shift the lots around so that they were able to do that. Because of the steep slopes, the natural terrain that this land occupies, we feel like the best recreational piece is the trail network and connecting to the town's outstanding trail network over at Matthew Forest, and allowing a connection through our property to other people who are looking to use those trails. And so we feel like we have met, when we did our initial, even before we purchased this piece of property and came in and talked to staff about what this would look like and what a development here would or should look like. It was recommended, I think, by Kent that we go to a PUD because a PUD is the best way. The dimensional requirements haven't been adjusted to comply with the newer state law with the smaller lot size. And theoretically, when you reduce the lot size, you're going to have smaller frontages, you're going to have smaller setbacks. The setbacks allow us also to have a variation in design. All of these plans are showing the same rectangular footprint. All of these plans show a rectangular footprint most commonly associated with a two-story home. We have a second oldest population in the country is Vermont. And so we have a lot of requests for one first floor owner suites. A first floor owner suite has a larger footprint on the first floor. It takes more building envelope. It's not a rule, but very often those first floor owner suites end up behind the garage because of how a good layout works and separating living space and public space and all of those types of things. So that additional flexibility in building envelope allows us more flexibility when working with clients. It creates a more interesting neighborhood when you drive through it because they don't all look the same. And when you take it's excellent that Aaron's in agreement with the 26 feet.
Yep.
Either one can fit in the 60-foot right-of-way, even with 15 feet of front yard setback, for instance, because that right-of-way, if you're only using up 26 of the 60, you're going to have at least 15 feet of green belt on either side of that road. So there's plenty of room to park a car without impacting the sidewalk or any of that stuff on both sides, not in the garage, but in front of the garage so that there's off-street parking. And so those are some of the thoughts. All of our plans will continue to have likeness only buildings.
What I'm looking for is just to make sure we identify things that either we're going to be transitioning, right? So it's going to be transitioning to another group the next round. So if we're in an acceptance of some of these directions, we should be able to at least qualify why we're accepting, the discussion on lot size and so forth. And I think basically, using the PUD as an option to be creative in this, because Stephanie, you've mentioned a couple times, and you wanted the larger number of units. But at this point, I think we should be approving sketch plan, one or the other of the sketches to go forward. So, we've got to find out what it takes to move this forward. Now, Colin, did the 9 issues that Kent put at the end of the 9 key issues, do you have any concerns with any of those as written? Because I'm pretty sure that everything we've talked about is covered in there.
I would agree with you. I don't think the number 8 is one where we would like to have guidance. We have requested a 8-foot wide rec path on one side of the street versus 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the street. We understand the requirement, and if you tell us to do the 2 5-foot sidewalks, that's what we'll do. Our reasoning writ large, and we've done this in several neighborhoods recently, is that it changes the feel of the neighborhood, and a wider path where people can walk side by side while they're on it, or push a stroller or walk a dog and do some of those things are nice things and are a more comfortable living situation. It also, people have pointed out that this is dense and that the lots feel small. The less we clutter the right-of-way with impervious surface, it's better for stormwater. It's better for all of those types of things, and it also helps us get the traffic around it. This is not a through road to anywhere, so the only people driving through here are people coming to one of these homes. And so the narrower streets, the traffic calming nature of that, kids still be able to walk across the street and walk around the rec path and do that type of stuff in a way that creates a walkable neighborhood that is comfortable for folks to live in. So we feel like it's a more comfortable and more efficient use of that space.
So right now it says recommended.
Are we on a particular line?
377.
Thank you.
My copy's 378, so it's number 8 on the key
Number
issues.
8, mine says
Number 8.
379, so yeah, right in there.
379.
Blame Google Docs.
In the three
That's it. Ken, you've got it as a recommendation. Is that at this stage, recommendations are not requirements; they're recommendations. If there's, I mean, is there? Do you see wiggle room on that?
Yes, I definitely do, and I think that trying to find something that's going to work best for the residents makes a lot of sense. I think if it is going to be a shared use path where you're going to be encouraging people to bike and walk there, we really shouldn't be having anything that's under 10 feet wide unless there's some real compelling reason to do that. We do have standards that allow it to go that narrow if there's some extenuating circumstance. In the public works specifications, it says 8 to 10 feet, but to see the design requirements that would help you figure out how you would pick that, it's not provided in there. It's in the VTrans manual, and in VTrans it would have the preferred minimum being 10 feet wide, and then if there's an extenuating circumstance, you could justify going.
So this wouldn't necessarily be like a transportation path because it's internal to the development. So could we rewrite that to say that the discussion on shared use path versus sidewalk should be part of preliminary, and and just basically punt it to preliminary and let it be based on what the neighborhood design and so forth are, what makes sense? Or, I mean, we can leave it as written, and as written it says recommended. So that would be a point for Colin to come back and debate with you for the planning, for preliminary, and then the DRB for the preliminary review. If that's sufficient as a call out, Colin, do you feel comfortable that it's there? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds good. And I mean, the design, it's just a different kind of characteristic. If you're expecting bicyclists to ride on it, like on a sidewalk, they can come together at 90-degree corners. You wouldn't expect a bicyclist to be able to do that. But when you have a shared use path, they wouldn't have to have the right curve radius that it makes sense. And I believe you already show a curve radius around the corners. So that's if that's that seems compelling to go with that approach.
And both options fit within the 60-foot right-of-way, which is a guarantee anyway. So we'd be very comfortable with that guidance.
so commissioners, does anybody have any concerns or questions with the suggestions or key issues that Kent has called out? Because we're not doing like conditions as part of sketches at this stage. We just need to approve or deny, or make some changes and approve or deny, and so forth. So we have a public hearing still open. So one more round. Is there anyone that'd like to offer any final comment on this application? Seeing none, hearing none, I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Josh, seconded by Paula. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Public hearing is closed. So commissioners, do you have anybody have any thoughts on how we want to move this forward? And I believe, I'm looking at you, Kent, do we need to choose a 32 or 34 at this stage? Is that valid? Or do we
I
want
think it
to?
would be helpful for the applicant if you could give a nod one way or the other, and about the other dimensional requirements, how you're feeling about that. But I think we could, I guess that would be helpful.
To say one way or another, or to indicate a preference? As in, we're approving 32 for sketch, or
'Cause normally
we'd
it's-
like 32?
Normally, we approve a design, a
Right.
sketch. And we've got two designs in front of us.
I think I have a concern. And it's not about the plan, it's about the law that changed and how our zoning fits into that. So that, to me, once that popped back into my head, would the 34 work with the new state laws of smaller, you know, are we going to have to, we are in Essex going to have to make some changes to conform with the state? And the fact that they've said that, yeah.
But
so-
we have regulations now that we're working off from, so we're looking.
Right, you have regulations now, but I do believe the state regulations will trump yours as well, because those are codified in law right now.
That's correct.
So that's
So
where
it is 5 units per acre, so that is the 0.2. So
Yeah, okay.
talking about being under 0.2
To
is
wouldn't,
not a state.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's not, the state wouldn't say we couldn't do that, but that is
Right.
not the requirement.
Catherine, just, does the state, is your interpretation that the state law says that we have to average that, or each lot has to be the 0.2, because it says 5 units per acre, it doesn't say 0.2, right?
So all the guidance I've seen says 0.2.
Okay.
And the other thing that I think you could argue with state requirements is that it talks about dimensional requirements. So our dimensional requirements of the side setbacks, front setback,
That's what I was
could
kind
be, yeah, I think what you're proposing could actually work in like our, yeah.
That's what I was trying to
But
get
it's not what
at
we
with-
have,
It's not what
but-
we have, but
yeah.
with what we're going to have
Yeah.
because of the new Act 181, it, to me, that
Yeah.
just kind of makes me feel a little bit more comfortable.
For a 34?
I'm open to the 34 then. Knowing that we have to, we're living in a state of gray a little bit because we have been given, the state has made a law change that we have to comply with. So you're kind of in that area where there is got to be some flexibility knowing that that law has to come into play here as well.
Yeah, what's interesting is that our PUD regulations already have reduced pretty much everything, so lot size, setbacks, maybe not all of the dimensional requirements, but most of them. And, you know, PUD are supposed to be small, so going forward, our PUD requirements, do they get smaller lots even? You know, so there's a whole kind of a cascading effect of amending the regulations. But that's not a
That's not,
conversation
yeah,
for
no.
now.
Thoughts? I mean, I'd like to potentially approve, personally, if I were to do this, I would approve the 32 unless the applicant comes back during preliminary and the PUD design or whatever allows for 34, or do we do 34 with an accepting of 32? I don't see how we can have two different designs as part of an approval. Have to pick one or the other. And once we lock into that design, I mean, is it if knowing that we've got a 32 design in the wings, could we approve the 34? And if they still can't make it fit and they're offered to drop it down to 32, does that invalidate everything that's been done to this point? Or, since the slopes and everything else are not impacted in the 32 unit design, do we go with that? From what you'd said earlier and so forth.
I think that with the.
It's true of slopes on both.
On both, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, from, you know, what I've heard from, I think both Aaron and Kent, that the 34 versus 32 would not impact your roadway design or, you know, any of.
Our roadway designs are, there's differences in the road between the 32 and the 34.
But not
Not huge.
Yeah, it wouldn't
Not
be, it's not
significant.
a full redesign.
No.
of anything.
No.
I mean, it's not inconceivable to come back to preliminary with some design changes. So,
Yeah, that's not uncommon actually when you dig more into the engineering.
Kent?
So they have a design that can meet the dimensional requirements. It sounds like there's some support for allowing more building units to go under the dimensional requirements, maybe even the setbacks to be less. You could potentially allow small enough lots that they could even get more houses. They maybe could get 6 houses. Would you want to even go lower? Like at what point?
At sketch plan, I don't want to, I mean, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on something. We've got a 32 unit design and a 34 unit design in front of us.
Right.
Let's keep it to that. And the biggest issues that I had with this was the traffic impact at 15 and the second exit, which both of those are on the table for review and mitigation in preliminary. Whether it's 32 or 34, I don't have a huge hang up one way or the other.
Well, since the 34 reduces the cost, and that's a big issue in terms of going forward and making affordable housing available, I would suggest that we go there, and if we have to, for some reason in the future, reduce it, then we can do that, but start with the more ideal in terms of what it will do for affordability.
Sounds like a motion.
I move that, what I just said. I move that we approve the 34 design with the understanding that if it becomes necessary, we can reduce it, but that is the preferred size given the costs relevant to purchase.
So to do that, we actually would need to add another issue into this line then. I think add another line item, issue 10, and that the Planning Commission supports a 34 unit design, if that's your motion.
Yes.
I know we're not doing conditions, but I think we need to capture that the A design is.
I'm sorry, I'm
I
having.
think we need to capture the A single design is in the motion, not just two different designs. And you're supporting 34 units.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we need a line 10 or a condition issue item, whatever phrase you want to use for it.
Conclusion is what.
Well, we're not actually calling them, conclusion. So key issue number 10, which would be on line 385. And that would be Planning Commission supports this project going forward as a 34 unit subdivision. Is that what, are you supportive of that, Paula?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, then I'll second it.
Second with a friendly amendment.
Yeah. So she moved, you seconded? Or I second?
You seconded.
I seconded, okay. It gets confusing. Any additional discussion on that? Georgia? Stephanie? Trevor?
I want to say, if feasible, 34 is feasible.
Well, this is sketch, right? So this is sketch, and it may not, anything can change. It can change down as when they come into preliminary. And I think that and for that discussion point, item 1 and item 2 both talk about design, dimensional requirements, PUD design, and so forth. So I think that I think captured a lot of opportunity in those two issues for changes to be brought forth as a preliminary or greater review to be brought forth.
I do have a question for Colin.
We got a motion on the table, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it says this is us right now.
Okay, I'll postpone it.
Hearing no additional questions, all those in favor of the motion as proposed and amended signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Note that, did you note when Trevor arrived? I don't remember what time he arrived.
Like 6:35.
For all the votes.
Yeah, 6:35.
Okay,
I want to say. It was
Okay.
shortly after the meeting started.
Right after, yeah.
okay, good. Okay,
Colin, this is just a point of interest. If you were to mix in some of the first floor suite what would that do to the overall?
So I'm gonna hold. I know we've got approval and stuff like that, but let's.
I was just curious about how it would affect the cost.
Probably we should have done that in public hearing mode, because it's about an application that's coming and so forth. So I think we gotta just walk a little bit of a line here on this.
Okay.
And we've closed this one out. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time.
Thank you all for your time, and we're going to declare it a milestone, not a millstone.
That works.
One way or the other.
Other business. I do have one item that I'd like to introduce another commission to potentially agree or motion. I would like to request that the first meeting of the new planning commission in the new year be an organizational meeting, and we have an officer vote in that meeting, the beginning of it. I think it's a new commission, a new mission, and I think we should at least start with a fresh discussion on the officers at that point. Who they are, doesn't matter. But I think I'd like to, if the commission supports that, I'd like a motion from all these sitting members, see if we can support that.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So that will be the first item on the first agenda of the new planning commission in 2025.
Maybe the second item on that agenda, or fourth or fifth, whatever, would be Stantec would like to come, they're the consultants for the Upper Main Street project, and present where they are in the project. So at that point, they should have a preferred master plan, as well as more details on the municipal facilities.
I would suggest that as part of our organizational, we also adopt the operating procedures.
Amended, I would suggest too, because we take out the quasi-judicial portion.
At least we have if we don't have that, if that document's not ready, we can at least add a note of amendments. You know, these are adopted, but these are the items that are being changed. And it should be a rolling process. As we find what we need to fix something, we fix it. Any other business?
Trevor wasn't offered a cookie, so if he wants a cookie before I take them home.
Oh, thank you. I love cookies.
Need a motion for the minutes of November 14.
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from November 14th.
Does anyone, we have a motion and a second. Do we have anyone want to offer any amendments to the minutes as written? Hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Motion carries 6-0. We have no executive or deliberative session. We have everybody saw that there's a amendment notice, bylaw amendment notice for the town of Jericho. Anything else? It's been a great ride.
I'll say who wants to make it.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned, 7:34.